The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is the West Stand continuing across the summer. You'll find it probably about once a week, I would say, at this point, Michael.
You're not committing to that, but okay.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. Either way, you will find it on YouTube. It's in your podcast app as well. Guests from across the world of Leeds United. I'm Dan Moylan. Michael Normanton is with me, as is Aidy White. Hello, Aidy. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Dressed for the summer as well. We're in the summer now, enjoying the nice weather in Leeds.
Got my stripes on, shorts on, trainers on. So, yeah, I'm ready for the off-season.
The pressure is all off. Leeds United did it. We made it. We haven't spoken since start of March, I think it was, which has gone really, really quickly. So it's a couple of months. Would have been around the, let's have a look, start of March. Was I in full panic mode at that moment? Or
I think it was just coming. I think it was just heading a few weeks after, was it?
Yeah, you were between the West Brom home game and the Portsmouth away game last time we spoke. And it went a little bit down.
Yeah, it did. It was that Portsmouth game because it was my first away one with the BBC. And yeah, it wasn't quite a good performance. And then we had the little lull after where we got a couple of draws, didn't we? And then eventually picked back up. But yeah, we did kind of creep into that little bit of a stage where we got a little bit anxious again.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the end of the season?
I loved it.
Silly question, wasn't it good?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Really, really special moments for everybody associated with it. And then to be at the home games doing the commentary and things like that, it kind of added a different element to it all. It was strange because after that, the game where we were waiting on Burnley.
Were you there doing the game?
Yeah, so we were doing that game that day, and then we heard all the fireworks outside, but we're still on air until like 8:30 at night. So empty stadium around us. And then we get the nod, we're promoted. There's me, Popey, Johnny just sat there like in a completely empty stadium. So it kind of, for them too, it took them back to those COVID days, it's very similar format where everybody else was just out celebrating. We were still on air, just the four of us in an empty stadium. And then eventually we had some of the players come up to us and speak to us. And Pete Lowy was up there giving us a little bit of whiskey and things like that. So no, it was a special moment. And then obviously the home game after where we all got to celebrate as a huge club and together, it was sensational and brilliant to see.
It's just great, isn't it? How was it different seeing it through commentary, radio eyes or analysis eyes rather than being a player? Because you've been promoted before. Yeah.
Been lucky enough to do it 2 or 3 times. So once via the playoffs and then twice just automatically. But as a player, you just see it, from you and your teammates' eyes. Whereas an overview as a pundit, you see it as the whole club and much more from a manager's and a fan's point of view. You've got that emotional connection as a fan, whereas as a player, you're just looking at a professional standpoint and you and your teammates.
Yeah, I suppose you've got all the various hats, haven't you? You've got fan, player, and now you're doing the analysis as well.
Yeah, you've got to, obviously being on the BBC and things like that, you can't be too biased, even though we're covering Radio Leeds. You've still got to remain calm when you're on air and things like that. But it is difficult, when you're seeing the 4, 5, 6 goals in that we spanked against Stoke, and then you're waiting for the results to come in. It's hard to just remain, level-headed and not get carried away in the moment when everybody around you's going, crazy and partying. But no, it's a phenomenal feeling and something special to be part of.
After that, the broadcast is finished. Do you get to see outside? Like, did you just have a wander outside, or were you kind of in the car and get out away from the madness?
So I went to the car and it was all a little bit carnage. I could see sort of the flares, and then I went to go left out of the Fulton car park towards the Billy Bremner statue, and there was just a sea of fans.
We were there.
I just couldn't go anywhere at all. So it was a case of, I had to quickly spin around and go the other way. I couldn't celebrate that night, unfortunately, with everybody. I had to get on for the kids, but it was just phenomenal seeing all the flares go off, and when we're on air, just the fireworks, and you could sort of sense these party atmosphere going on, but we were sat inside an empty stadium, so it was a little bit surreal.
Yeah, you've never been much of a fire beast, I don't think.
No, certainly not, I'm afraid.
But you would have seen, getting promoted 3 times, you would have seen what it's like. I mean, what is it like being in that dressing room when that switch flips, when you've got it over the line, when all that pressure's off? What is that like to be a part of?
It's such an amazing feeling, and when you've built a bond with those players around you, they've had your back, you've had theirs throughout the season, and then you get to that point of, I've spoken about in the past how you have to compartmentalize in certain games, and you have to put it to one side very, very quickly, move on to the next. But then you just get this, this rush of, you can let out all your emotions. You don't have to worry anymore. You don't have to feel anxious. You can just enjoy being in that moment. And it's, such a terrific thing because all the training sessions and the traveling and being away from your family, it just makes it worthwhile. And it's, those moments that you treasure forever.
So after we did get promoted, and we effectively did that when we spanked Stoke 6-0, next game is Bristol City. And whilst there was still some jeopardy there was a little bit of something to achieve in terms of the title. That 4-0 against Bristol, is there a difference there in the dressing room when you're playing with that complete freedom?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there was the aim to win the championship, and thankfully we got it over the line in the end. But when you can go out there knowing that you've done your job, and you can just play football and enjoy it, and bask in the atmosphere at Ellen Road that day. I mean, it was sensational, and we've been lucky over the years where we've seen a lot of amazing atmospheres at Ellen Road, and that was definitely one of the best I've ever seen. And as a player on that pitch, to play with the shackles off and just enjoying the moment, and it could have gone one or two ways, and we thought maybe it might be the stuck in holiday mode and still hung over from the celebrations, but they didn't. They just went
they wanted that title.
Yeah, they just used all that energy around Ellen Road for the better, and took the game straight to Bristol. And yeah, what a performance in such a special occasion.
As a player, you must feel like 100 feet tall when that's the atmosphere, when you've got it over the line, so the job's done, and now it's just basking in the kind of glory and the joy of the fans when they're not on your back anymore, when they just want to see you over the line. Yeah,
and it's that, like you say, that flip of the switch, isn't it, where you can go from all that pressure into just pure enjoyment mode, and play with pure freedom and enjoyment and
swagger.
Yeah, well, they did, didn't they?
Yeah,
like the goals, the passes, the through balls, Peru's. It was just it was an unbelievable performance, and yeah, they deserve all the credit that they've had this season. They've had to dig in at certain times, and at periods of the season we've questioned whether they got the ability to get it over the line, but I don't think they ever wavered inside the changing room, did they? They always believed in themselves and got it through to the end, and credit to everybody involved in the club.
You never wobbled, did you, Dan?
No, of course not.
You were steadfast throughout.
Rock solid.
Yeah.
We'd definitely be 100% certain we'd be playing Premier League football, you said.
Yep, correct.
And I felt the same.
What was the question that you asked at that point of the season? Was it?
It was the Swansea thing. It was because when Meslier let the shot in late on, but it was the drop in the ball. I was like, I don't want it, because that was we'd done the QPR draw, and at that point we'd only won Millwall. We'd only won that one game so it was a 1 win in 4 going into that Swansea game, because we'd drawn against West Brom, lost to Portsmouth, which is about to say when it's around the time when we spoke. Then you draw at QPR, but we dug it back out against QPR, so that's encouraging. They've got fight in them. Maybe this is not the same as last year. We go home and it was one of the most winnable games of the season against 14th, 15th place Swansea. We should do this, and we should have done it. But to see them, I don't know, there's just a fear deep in my soul that we were going to do the same thing again, just like it starts to fall off just at the wrong time. I mean, but I took comfort, as we kind of laughed about many times, Michael, in spreadsheets, and everything I was looking at, all the underlying data, to use a Jesse Marshism, all the underlying data said that we should be fine.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at it going, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But then it didn't translate into the results. I was like, please. It was more like a bargaining, like a desperation. I just everything says we're going to be all right, and we should be. And I think we're made of sterner stuff than last season, and we're better than that. We don't really lose games.
It was the fear of last season as well, wasn't it? Of having a top three, which with a month of the season to go, it looked a little bit like the top three would keep winning, didn't it? And as it did this season, and you always think, but someone will drop off. And last season, last season, however you want to phrase it, the season we didn't go up, it was us who drops off.
Yeah.
It's like, just not again. It's someone else's turn now to have this.
And it was that period after the international break as well, wasn't it, where it happened, last season. And then it just the fear of it all starting to unfold a little bit. I think it's just that old scar tissue getting to us, but they had the mentality this year just to, and I do feel we had a stronger team this year. Maybe not individuals wise, with Somerville and Reuter in there last season. They're tremendous individuals, but it just looked like we had more of a team ethos, and I feel that probably helped him towards, getting promoted rather than just winning games. Teams will get you promoted, not just individuals.
As a former fullback, what did you make of Bogle in the closing stage of the season? Because we've said that he was just unplayable for large periods at the end of the season.
I think the first maybe 2 to 5 games of the season, he was a little bit questionable, wasn't he? And then, especially in the second half of the season, he just picked up pace and he looked untouchable and unplayable from fullback at times. And, his forward movement and picking up the balls, but not just that, also his pressing, how aggressive he was. And, I think it might have been the Bristol game or the Stoke game where there was about 2 or 3 occasions where the goalkeeper's thrown it out to the fullback. He's already nicking the ball off him before the fullback's even received it. And then his end product in that final third, sensational.
Such good footwork at times. There were little things that he'd do in attack, and I'd be like, how's he done that?
Yeah, dip the ball one side and he'd go around the other one. He did that quite a few times.
Just like deft touches, wasn't it? And a lot of fullbacks can maybe go forward and can go on the overlap and link 1-2s up, but then to have the end product from both sides of the pitch, both fullbacks, including Firpo in that, we've been blessed this season. So for me, Bogle's been one of our outstanding performers.
Speaking of the fullbacks, Byram Firpo, the retained list has come out and the club is in negotiation with both of them. Now, it's worth saying that at this point, the retained list, it has to be released by a certain point according to the EFL rules, and we're still under EFL rules until June the 30th, and then we switch over into Premier League for the new season, don't we? So we've had to release the retained list. So you can read a certain amount into it, but you can't read everything into it. It's a thing that has to be done by a hard deadline. So we are saying goodbye to Joski Lavogi. So I want to ask you about like senior figures like that in the dressing room who necessarily don't play that much, but contribute a lot in terms of personality and maturity. And then also where you sit on Byram and Firpo. So either of those, go for it.
I think on the Giavogi situation, I think he probably knew the script as he was coming into the club. Probably wasn't going to be starting every week, and he'd step in as and when needed. On the pitch, his performances, they were okay. Maybe in that Harrogate game, we all were a little bit like, he's probably not quite ready to step in full time. But I think what the players say and the messages on the farewell speak volumes of what an amazing character he's been to have around the club, and somebody that the players could lean on for advice, who's been there and done it. He seems like such a positive character, and it's easy for a player to come into that situation and go into that, I'm not playing, I've been around it, I should be playing it. But for him, it wasn't that at all, was it? It was the shoulder to lean on, that big brother figure. And the fact that the players all, say he's one of the best guys that they've ever encountered in football, that speaks huge volumes for him as a character.
I think he calmed the fans down a bit when he arrived as well, because it was in that period where we had injuries in central midfield, and even though he didn't really play, or he'd come on for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, knowing there was another central midfielder there who had like a CV behind him, I feel like was just reassured people at a point when everyone was, if you were looking deeper maybe at Charlie Crew or someone who we've never really seen play, it just gives everyone the nerves a little bit. And actually you looked at him and you were like, look, this guy's He's played all over the place. He's going to be fine if he needs to come on.
It all feels a bit flimsy, doesn't it, when you start, well, is this young player going to be ready enough to step up? But then to bring in a wise old head like that. Yeah,
and also a physical presence. We look at our team, we're not the tallest and most physical, and, from set plays, defensively, although, we've been pretty solid this season, there was times where you think we could maybe just do with that added height. And, towards the end of the season, he got chucked in a few games for that presence. The last 10, 15 minutes, whatever it may be, just for set plays. And we lacked that. So I think coming onto the pitch, his first performance, I can't remember who it was against now, but he played with that swagger and didn't he? And then from there, he just had the fans on side. And like you said, Michael, he just calmed everybody down. And then I think the players knew around him, what he'd come to do, and he could step up if needed.
And how important is a senior figure like that in the dressing room? It's somebody who, because they all called him Uncle Josh, as we found from the farewell. So he was very much seen as the kind of the big brother figure, the one who you can rely on for a bit of emotional support and guidance. How important is that in a dressing room?
Well, it's huge because if you've got a squad like ours who, we've got some really talented players and players that play internationally, but they're still fairly young. So to have somebody who's at the other end of the career, who's been there, done it, played it, huge international football at some really big clubs, and you can lean on him for advice, just personal advice as well, and whether that be dealing with pressure, dealing with these situations where we're heading in towards the end of the season, it's still quite tight, and we had that hangover of last season and the fear, and just a positive character that you could bounce off and be like, we've got this, lads, just set yourselves down. Someone who can also relay Farke's message is, because I'm sure, Daniel Farke had had him, early doors on side and said, look, this is the situation. You may not be playing all the time, but you're going to be a huge influence around the squad. And, I think credit to him where it's due, and I think he'll always be welcome back at Ellen Road.
I really liked the stuff that he was talking about in his farewell, like hanging around at Thorpe Arch and making sure he was the last one out of training to set an example for everybody about putting the work in and not taking your foot off the gas. I think it does set a really good example.
I think especially when you have been there and done it, and you've got people like that, like I said, at the other end of the career who don't have many years, on the pitch left, to see somebody who is leading by example, then it can only set a positive messages, not just for this season, but for the players' whole careers and going forward in their development.
We mentioned Byram and Firpo. There's a conversation clearly to be had there about both of those. And I suppose, are we in a position now where it's like, is it sentiment versus the reality of the Premier League? Is the sum that needs to be worked out, I suppose, at this point, because it's really hard off the back of going up as champions and then feeling this real emotional attachment to these players. You've been even saying it like Michael, like, just give Firpo a new contract. To not lean into the sentimentality, because we love these guys now because they're giving us a great memory. Yeah,
it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because in one viewpoint, you feel like they've earned it. They've been a huge part of the squad. And, they've both played a decent amount of games, especially Firpo this year. So I feel like he's played a pivotal part. So he deserves another contract. But then it's the question of whether that is going to be enough next year. And, for my opinion on Firpo, I think he's, excellent going forward, but I'm still unfortunately questioning his defensive attributes. And especially in the Premiership, where I don't imagine we're going to be in as much control, and we'll have that backs against the wall a little bit more this season.
Just on that then, you can possibly help us here from a professional's point of view. What's the gap there between the Championship and the Premier League? What do you see as an ex-pro as being the sort of the key differences? So in terms of that step up, what is it? What is that step actually about between EFL and Premier League?
I feel like the players in the EFL are generally they've got some solid attributes. They're either athletes or they're really good ball players. Whereas that step up in the Premiership, it's generally you have the whole package. So you can play, you can be physical, you can do just about every part of the game very, very well, and you don't just have one standout attribute. So for me, Firpo going forward, phenomenal, outstanding. But then defensively, has he got that, one-on-one quality and just the defensive awareness? Because I do feel naturally he's a player that wants to go forward. Can he just sit back in and hold his shape and not get dragged out of position? That's the major question. But it may be a case that we look at, renewing his contract and then it may even be moved on, you know what I mean? So you never know in those situations that the club might want to get a little bit of money back, or at the same time they might want to use him going forward next season. And it's always nice to have a player that you can rely on in terms of he knows what the club's about. Now he's been here for a few years. So Daniel Farke might want him around the club, and same for Sam. He's been a great servant over the last few years, hasn't he? And, if we go out and find a replacement, what's that going to cost us? And are they as capable as Sam is in that position? Yeah, they may add a little bit more competition, but I can't imagine somebody coming in and taking Bogle's place straight from the off. So having Sam Byram in there who can step in when necessary, and he'll probably understand, similar to maybe what Giavogi's done, he might have to take a step back from playing as much. Whether he'll want to do that, I don't know, and that may be a question for him. But in terms of what he can offer off the pitch as well, I think that plays a huge factor. So sentiment-wise, there's still the little part of that has to be involved, but we do have to also ask the bigger question: are they then good enough at this stage to take us to the next step?
For Byram, I always wonder if he would welcome a bit less playing, because he's of an age, isn't he? Where I think at points we've probably pushed him right to his limit, haven't we? Given the years prior to us joining us, he'd not played much football at all, had he? And then all of a sudden he was coming in, and due to injuries, and Farker obviously likes him as well, actually playing a reasonable number of consecutive midweek weekends, wasn't he? And it was probably a bit beyond what we maybe would have expected. I think the other argument for Byram is that in the Premier League there are homegrown player rules out there as well, and he obviously, even though he's clearly not a young player, he does fulfill a bit of quota for that as well. So he's, whether or not you want him on the bench as opposed to like maybe an untried younger fullback.
I think is the rule. It's 8 players who've spent time in an academy in this country out of your 25-man squad. I think it might be something like that, but don't quote me on that.
And I think don't some need to have been at your own club? I think as well. I don't know
if that's the case anymore.
Oh, is it maybe changed?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because you get a 9 on the bench, you were saying the other day, weren't you?
I think
in the Premier League, so it's a huge bench. So, and if Sam Byram's on there, I'm kind of quite comfortable with that. As him being one of the options on it.
He's also played in the Premiership before, hasn't he? He's had years at Norwich where he's been there, West Ham, and I think if it wasn't for that period where he did have those longer term injuries, then he'd probably be a little bit more established at that stage, at that Premier League level. Sorry, so it's a difficult one to answer. But for me, I'd give him a contract and say, look, Sam, this is the situation. You may not feature as much as you want, and Michael could be right. I think if he was at a different club, he'd probably just want to go out and play football. But when you've got that affinity and the club that you've come through, and he's been a Leeds fan, so I'd take that role on and really try help as much as I can. And when I'm asked of, step up.
You've got to assume he's not going to be on a huge amount of money as well. Like it'll be certainly in Premier League terms, it'll be a relatively low contract offer that he's getting. So I would personally be inclined to keep him around.
Always with the money angle.
Well,
it's important though, isn't it? There's going to be a big wage bill in the Premier League next season. So having somebody who's not taking a massive chunk on that, and then somebody who you don't have to go out and spend 10 million on a right back for it makes a good argument to keep Sam. And I think he's not going to be one of those that's going to kick up loads of problems. If he's not playing, he's going to be, that Giavogi figure who, you can bounce off and ask for advice. And he's a top professional, always working hard. And if it's the bill for that. So for me, it would be a no-brainer for that situation.
There's another interesting equation you've kind of got to figure out as well. If it's sentiment versus the reality of the Premier League. It's that, as Angus Kinnear told us when he came in before, it's like the problem you face when you go up is that you cannot turn over your squad fast enough, because basically I think the PSR rules almost prevent you from doing so. You can't churn as fast as you need to. And as was shown with Forest, who have done it quite successfully, but they ran it very, very close to the line and overstepped the line as well, because they got points deductions in order to stay up the speed at which they churned their squad. I suppose there's a balance to be struck between churning your squad and maintaining some sort of squad identity or affinity to the club, which is something where Sam Byram, I suppose, he has that. He understands the club, even just like the physical environment. He's been around it a long time, so he could be that steady hand on the tiller for younger players. Yeah,
and I feel like Daniel Farke massively relies on that, doesn't he? He wants to create a culture of people who want to be at the club, and there's no doubt about it. Sam will want to be here, and hopefully that contract can be properly suit both parties, and he can get what he deserves. But there's no doubt about it, having players like Sam around the club, and players who aren't going to necessarily kick up a fuss when they're not playing, and I think he suits the bill massively. So for me, I'd definitely give him another deal.
I've just opened Sam Byram's Wikipedia. Actually, his only times he's played more than 30 games in a season had been for Leeds.
Right.
So that's in the two of the last seasons, and then you're going back to 2014-15. So he's had a lot of not playing in the middle. Just thinking about this, in many ways, getting promoted is a bit like being a driving instructor, isn't it? In that, if you think about it, right? So your job as a driving instructor is to teach somebody how to drive
and then they pass their test, and they're no longer a customer. So you're basically always working towards losing customers, basically. Obviously, you've got to get new ones. It's a bit like getting promoted, isn't it? Like, you want to get promoted because that's what the competition dictates you have to do. But
do yourself out of a job.
Effectively, you're doing yourself out of a job as a player, aren't you, to a certain extent?
You can be, because, I mean, it's not in the back of your head because you've got a goal to achieve, but once you've done it, it's then, am I then going to be playing next year? You know, you've got to question that, and there'll be a lot of players, I'm sure, in the squad that back themselves, but at the same time think, well, am I at threat? You know, am I going to get as much game time? And, you know, I'm sure, unfortunately, for some players, there will be, you know, moved on, and we'll thank them for all they've done for the club. But ultimately, it's a business, and as players, we're almost a little bit like cattle, aren't you? You know, you're at good stock at one point, and then at another point, you're not quite. So it's those ups and downs and roller coasters of being a football player. But everybody, by the time you're 4 or 5 years into it, you understand that it's also a business as well as an enjoyment and a career. So you've got to take that and quickly learn it.
It's like many entertainment industries, I suppose, isn't it? It's quite high risk but high reward as well.
Exactly.
So you get paid well for doing it, but you know, it's a short career for one thing, and suddenly you might get to one summer and you're out of favour, and before you know it, you're having to move house and up sticks and go to a different club, and sometimes a different country or a different part of the country.
Tony Mowbray spoke about it, didn't he? From a manager's point of view, saying, you know, be careful what you wish for getting promoted, because essentially saying if West Brom were to get up, which obviously they didn't, and he lost his job anyway, but like, I'll be sacked next season if I get him up, because that's
my job done.
Because there's no point even trying to compete in the Premier League with the setup we have and everything. They will come back down, and it's kind of as you've seen with the teams that have gone up this year. But we, of course, are different.
Because we're special little sunflowers.
Of course, and I think as a player, you've got to get to that point and then still back yourself, haven't you? So to get to the Premiership and Premier League, and then work so hard in the Championship, and then it's a case of that's the end goal, isn't it? As a player, to play as high as you can. So you want the opportunity to play. So sometimes it's a case of the club might have to knock on your door and say, you know, unfortunately, all you've done for us is amazing, but we might have to move you to one side. And it's sad as a player, you know, like you say, you have to move to another country potentially.
Okay. I was going to say Barnsley, but you know,
I enjoy my time at Barnsley. We're quite successful.
I know I'd have been stitching you up to say it.
Just a little bit further down the M1.
All right, I'll say Scotland.
Yeah, I was going to say I was thinking north of the wall for different country rather than South Yorkshire, but you know, we'll let you have that one. Well, just with reference to Barnsley and playoff finals, because that's this weekend. And I don't know about you, but I've just been gradually just easing into summer mode, as we were saying at the start of the show, Aidy, with you in your shorts and your t-shirt. But the season is still ongoing. I'd kind of forgotten that the Premier League goes this late as one thing. And I suppose like you're hoping for our transfer action to start kicking into life after the Premier League finishes, but still the playoffs are still ongoing, which I don't know about you, but I just get that little sort of shudder of panic thinking about them. Just it must be like a carryover from last year, thinking like this time last year we were still waiting, and we've actually had a couple of weeks of nice, relaxing, joyful promotion.
Probably the longest break we'll ever get, in fact, as fans, isn't it? Because you get that. It's basically been over since the day of the
Stoke game, hasn't it? So that's a month ago.
So and the Premier League doesn't start till the middle of August, does it? So this is, everyone enjoy this break. This is as good as it gets, because if we come down next season, then it ends later, starts earlier, doesn't it? If you're in the playoffs, that drags it on. Yeah. Was it? I think it was Barron Cross when he was in. He was saying it's a little bit like when you do your GCSEs at age 16, and it is, because my daughter's doing it at the minute. And I keep saying, so you know, you've got another 3 or 4 weeks of this, but after that, you've got a lovely long calm summer. You don't have to get a job. You know, we'll continue to feed you probably. Although you did have a job at 16. You were playing for Leeds.
Very fortunate, wasn't I? Yeah. It was a couple of months after my GCSEs that I made my debut, so I was quite fortunate in that. But
how did you manage to get through that? Because Harry Gray's just done his, hasn't he?
Has he? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
scary, wasn't it? I mean, hopefully he has a better career than I do, but But it's a weird period because you're just so focused on wanting to be a footballer, and as much as you know, schoolwork's important, your mind is on being a footballer. So to have that quick turnaround, and then it's like, oh wow, I've actually achieved, you know, what I've set out to do as a kid. So it's pretty pleasing. But going back to that sort of period about, I don't think I've ever experienced this, you know, that this holiday period that we've had now as fans, and that continued party since that Stoke game. I've never come across it before. It's always a case of, it might be the last game of the season that you do it. So, and then there's a quick turnaround of maybe 4 weeks to the next season. So you don't get that long, but we've had a phenomenal time. So hopefully we can enjoy it. But we were just discussing, it's almost at that tipping point now, isn't it? Where we're kind of looking towards the future of next season. So I think enjoy it for a bit longer.
Because the window opens on the 1st of June. So it's about a week and a half away. And, it's within touching distance, the onto the next thing feeling, isn't it? I know I'm almost ready to okay, what's next?
It's weird though, isn't it? Because you spend most of the season, really, the last 2 seasons, kind of wanting it to be over so you can see the result of it. But then I think after the Bristol game, we all came back in here and were like, play another game. Yeah. Just keep doing
go for it.
Just keep, I don't know, get some testimonials on. I want to go back and enjoy it again and just see some more goals scored and beat some more teams.
Have a testimonial.
Is anybody close to one?
Cooper never had one, did he?
No.
Let's get Coops back.
So that would be the option, but he's still playing. He's still playing.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll have to wait for that one, but just have him for someone else. Come on.
Pablo.
I mean, Sam Byram's sort of never left Leeds. Have one for Sam.
Emotionally, anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's I almost want to enjoy it, because I'm one pleased about with the way that the promotion happened is that because we didn't get the chance to celebrate it in 2020, I was determined to enjoy it this time. And I don't necessarily just mean going out and getting leathered, because I think I only drank anything across the whole promotion thing on the day we got promoted when we were out on the low fields. Beyond that, it was just the feeling. I just wanted to enjoy that feeling, and I'm so glad that I was aware of that whilst it was happening. It's very rare you get the sort of awareness to realise you're living through history, and I felt that's what I felt like, because we'd missed it last time, and I really, really wanted to savour that this time, and I've still got it. It's still kind of I feel a lot more settled and calm this summer than I probably have in any other, and I'm quite excited by the challenge ahead, but I can feel it all. Yeah, it's all just tailing off just a little bit now.
Yeah, and as a player, you probably get a week of enjoyment, and then all of a sudden...
Tell Largy Ramazani.
Is he still loving it up?
Probably.
Yeah, still in Vegas somewhere. I hope he's come home.
I just keep waiting for it. There's going to be a TMZ celebrity
news story. Brilliant. But yeah, you usually have a week or two, and then it's a case of, right, you're looking forward, because all of a sudden you get a text or a call or an email. By the way, boys, this is your off-season plan. Get your running shoes on, keep yourself fit.
What does that look like?
So over the last few years that I was involved, it was kind of like in an email format, or end of season meeting. They probably didn't really have one, did they? Because we're all still steaming. So, but yeah, just get sent to you saying this is the script for the off season. There'll be maybe 4 or 5 sessions. In that, they'll include running, gym. The first week of it'll just be very, very steady. Go play a bit of tennis, have a swim, and then gradually it just picks up until that time where they're coming back into pre-season, and then by then you already should be at the speed. It's not a case of you come to pre-season to get fit. You should already be at a decent level fitness-wise, not match fit, but just general fitness. So lots of gym work, lots of strength training, and lots of running.
Did that change over your time in the game, where there was a lot more off-season professionalism? Did you notice that kind of rising as an expectation? Yeah,
for sure. During the sort of early periods of my career, it was easy to come back, and probably I was quite young and I was quite fit in terms of running stuff. So I'd always be probably one of the better runners. And then you get towards the back end of the season, you're thinking, hang on a minute, some of these boys are keeping up here. That's not the norm. And people are seeing the sense, and they realise they can't just have a summer of just on holidays. You've got to maintain the work. And
did anyone tell Paddy Kenny?
Now behave. That photo was taken with a bad lens. He still can't let that go, can he?
Every single time.
Every single year.
On Twitter, it'll pop up and go, this is Photoshop, by the way. I was in good shape. He has all the pictures from the day going, look at me, I was fine.
It's just a bad shadow.
It would hurt, to be fair, though, wouldn't it?
It's been more analysed than the bloody Zapruder tapes of JFK's assassination. If you look at the shadow in the grassy knoll.
Oh, brilliant. To be fair, I think he quickly lost it, though. It did come off it well.
Oh, so it was there in the first place?
Well, I'm not saying that, no. I'm not saying that. It's just that dodgy picture.
No, look, it's taken from a wide angle. It's a fisheye lens, and it's made me look bad. Yeah.
Great character was Paddy, to be fair to him. Brilliant.
If one of the lads did come back and they were a little bit out of shape, would you be getting into him about it?
Well, there'd be a fat club. So it'd be like, oh, by the way, imagine in Bielsa's era as well.
It was everyone.
that won't stop. But it'd be a case of like you've come back overweight or you've come back with your skin folds, so your body fat percentage being not what it should be. You've got to do extra sessions on the bike after training to make sure that you're at the level that you should be. So, yeah, for sure it does happen. But as you know, years have gone by, people are a little more common sense now approach to it all.
How quickly can like a pro drop weight like that when you are back for pre-season and goes like you're however much overweight? How much are you sort of talking about losing in this?
It's not loads. Maybe a couple of kilos, something like that.
That sounds like quite a lot.
But in football terms, like you could go out and play a game and come back in and you weigh yourself and you could be a couple of kilos lighter.
Really?
Just via body fluids and losing sweat. And that actually happens. Where boys get weighed before and after games. But yeah, I'm talking 2 or 3 weeks in the fat club and you're back out. Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks in the fat club.
I'm picturing you sat around some sort of leisure centre with loads of middle-aged women chatting about how many sins you're allowed and stuff.
Nah, you'd be on the bike with Alan Sutton grinding out, and so it was. So the old physio, it was tremendous on the bike. He'd have this bike set up where there'd be like 3 or 4 bikes, and he'd have his own bike, and I think it was calibrated differently.
Right.
So he'd always like come out and you're like, how the hell have you managed that, Sutton? He's like, oh, you're not keeping up. And like, no. He's phenomenal character.
Taking some links in the chain out or whatever.
Must have done. I don't know.
But we spoke to Alan Sutton, didn't we? And he operates at like 100 miles an hour. So maybe he feels like he's kind of got the output like of a hamster.
Maybe.
So maybe that was it. He kind of just... Phew.
I think he was saying he could run better than Yeboah as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he told us to, which I think that was Yeboah's style. It was like, listen, I'll do it on the night.
Well, that is exactly what he said, actually. Like, Yeboah would come back and they would run along the old railway track bed that passes Thorpe Arch. Right. So either up towards Harrogate or back in the other direction or whatever. Because I suppose it's a nice flat curve, isn't it, where you're not going to be interrupted. So Yeboah would just be trundling along at the back. It's like, just don't worry about me.
So, yeah, you get those players, unfortunately, that just come back and just aren't, quite naturally fit. So you always accommodate that, unfortunately. There may be like some of the best technical footballers out there, but they're just not natural runners. So they're always going to be at the back and you accommodate that. But most of the players nowadays are pretty fit and they keep themselves to a high standard in the off-season.
Another thing that you notice about the Premier League, and apparently it's going to be fed into Leeds United's recruitment this summer, is the physicality, size and physicality. It's a league of beefy bastards, isn't it? They're
all huge athletes. At the ultimate athletes at that level, you haven't just got that technical ability like I talked about earlier. You've got the whole package, and they're all quick, they're all strong, and they're all 6'2", and proper athletes. So it's important that we do recruit that way, and we maybe get a few more bodies and physicality wise in there, but especially for set plays, and it might be important for us this year. Our attacking and defensive set plays, maybe getting a few more goals from that aspect. So, yeah, recruitment wise, it's a key.
It's funny watching Manos Solomon take his shirt off. You went, Jesus Christ, he's in good shape, isn't he?
He's about 3'4", but 3'4" wide.
Yeah, because he's tiny, but with a shirt on, you wouldn't quite realise the specimen is under there. But he took his shirt off, and everyone went, "Wow!"
When he was going through that, he took his shirt off, and then for a second he went to his shorts, and he come back. I thought he was going to go the full way, and then
maybe he was just adjusting them.
Maybe
straight down the tunnel.
I think he quickly realised,
swinging his shorts around there.
No, but even at championship level, you get some tremendous athletes, and a lot of the time, I was speaking to Eddie Gray a few weeks back, and I was asking about Viduka because a lot of people thought Viduka was just fat, and it's Sutty as well was like, no, Viduka was an absolute machine. He was ripped and shredded, and Eddie Gray agreed. And yeah, it's just what you think from the outside. They've got this build to them, but underneath there's still 6% body fat and shredded.
Wild, isn't it? I remember actually when we spoke to Eddie when we were doing the Phil Hay show and Phil was off, and he was a guest on that, and asked him about how he used to deal with Viduka, and for whatever reason Viduka would respond to being knocked down. So Eddie would get him up against the wall and say,
make him angry.
Yeah, make him say, you're useless. You've got nothing. You're not going to score today. I've heard you're rubbish, kind of thing. Yeah. And you used to wind him up that way. So funny, is it like a motivational technique, isn't it? Just have somebody beat you down for a bit, then go out there angry and then score 4 goals against Liverpool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What a player. Were you down at Plymouth for the...
Unfortunately not. Yeah. No, I wasn't down there doing the comms or anything. So I was just back home. I was actually had the kids, so I was just sat there on the telly watching it, and it was just amazing. Just me by myself, but just in the living room, just like giving it fist pumps. And yeah, it was just sensational to all that hard work from everybody involved at the club, from the kitmen, cleaners, nutrition, every aspect of the club. They deserve all the credit, and hopefully they've enjoyed this period of time off. But quickly it'll creep back round, and you're always moving on to that next thing, aren't you?
We are. Aidy, enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll catch up again soon, yeah?
Perfect. Thank you very much. See you in the Premier League.
Yeah, see you there.
The Square Ball Podcast.